So earlier today, The Last Half Dead put out a video talking about some of the new rumors about the Eldar Craftworld. So I want to go over what these rumors are and what Games Workshop should do if they happen to be true. Alright, just to summarize these rumors really quickly, the rumors are that on Christmas Eve we'll be getting leaks showing the new models for the Eldar teams. These will be the Swooping Hots, Eldar Rangers, Guardians, and then the Warp Spiders. These are just rumors, so if you're an Eldar player, don't get too excited just yet. Alright, so in the area I live and the group I play with, we have literally 0 Eldar players. So I have no experience with them personally, as far as playing with or against them. Glass in his video said that they're possibly one of the worst teams though. He also said that they're particularly bad for new players, because of the way they play, they're really punishing if you mess up and you get caught out. This is because they heavily rely on their silent ability for their weapons, which are where they can basically shot without being shot at. So if you mess that up, they're pretty squishy. And they're also not particularly high damage either. He's basically the YouTube Killteam meta expert, so if he's saying they're one of the worst teams, they're probably pretty bad. As far as what the new Eldar codex and the rumor about these new models could mean for Killteam, there's a couple of possibilities here. The first is that we just did nothing. The codex comes out, the rumors are true about the models, we just don't get a Killteam. Obviously, as Killteam players, this would be a bummer, and we'd have some really sad Craftworld players. Well, sadder Craftworld players, if that's possible. And one thing that Last Half Dead brings up is that we could be getting a White Dwarf Killteam, where if there's new models, it's basically we just get a White Dwarf team for those models, where it's very similar to what we have now. It's just buffed, kind of like what they did with AdMech or the Thousand Suns team. Glass calls this uninspired, which I think is a good word for it, because it's better than nothing, but it's not particularly creative or interesting. It's good if you're an Eldar player, because your team might be in meta again, and they might be competitive, but it's nothing very exciting. So the option I'm most excited about, and from his video I think he's most excited about as well, is the possibility of getting Warp Spiders in Killteam. So I don't care if they're their own kill team or if they're with another kill team, it would just be really cool to see them in game. So there's a couple different ways they could handle the teleportation. What Last brings up is that they could basically either ignore terrain where they're teleporting through it, or they're just treated as having fly, which would be the simpler way of doing it. Another thing he brings up is having some kind of free dash or some kind of ploy or equipment that will let you dash, effectively making them 3 APL, and this would probably be a really good way to handle it as well. Alright, now I want to get into my thoughts about what Games Workshop should do with the Warp Spiders. So there's 2 things that really make Warp Spiders unique. The first is obviously their teleportation. So this works because they have warp drives built into their armor, so they can jump into the Immaterium and then back out behind their target, hit their target, and then run away. The other thing that makes them unique, in the world of 40k at least, is they don't just sit there and fight mono-a-mono. They teleport in, attack, hopefully kill their target, and then teleport out. It's said that you basically never get a chance to hit them, which is kind of different from the Space Marines and Custodes that just sit there and wail on their targets. This hit and run tactic fits into Killteam perfectly, so that's one reason I'd really like to see them included. I always like it where the fluff kind of lines up with the game mechanics itself. Alright, so how do you actually implement this as a game mechanic? I really like Last Half Dead's idea of giving them either a free dash or some kind of teleportation so they can start off somewhere safe, teleport or move to where they hit their target, and then teleport or move either into a safe spot or at least behind some cover so they're not totally out in the open. So this will give them that hit and run feel that they need. This could either be a ploy, it could be equipment, or even something like the Orc Daka Boy, where it's an ability built in where you use 1 AP but you get 2 actions for it. So I'm sure a lot of people listen to that and think it's way overpowered, and I think you're right. But there is a solution to that that's also built into the lore. And the way you fix this is by adding an element of risk to the teleportation itself. So the Warp Spiders are considered the bravest of all the Aeldari warriors, not because of how they fight, but because when they teleport, they're going into the warp. And there's a chance that Slaanesh could steal their souls while they're there. So since there's always a risk of their souls being devoured, you could add in this element into their teleportation, where there's like an element of risk reward with it. So the easiest way to do this is you roll a d6 every time they teleport. If it's a 1, it fails, and they take damage. So if they've taken damage and you don't get to move with that unit, you've just wasted AP. If there's only 4 of them per fire team, that could be pretty damaging and really mess up your strategy. Alright, so another way you could do this, and this would probably be cool but overly complicated to be honest, is having a stacking risk system. So the first time you do it, it's either free, or you have to roll, and if you did a 1, you fail. And then the next time that operative tries to teleport, they have to roll higher than a 2, and then higher than a 3, and so on and so forth, till you have to roll 6s to teleport. If the game could even go on that long. I think this would show that they're getting more and more exposure to the warp every time they teleport, and there's always that chance that they could be injured or it could go wrong. I don't think balance-wise you could have it where they just die in the Immaterium, because you did a couple bad rolls, you auto-lose. But I think having something like Mortal Wounds 3 or 4 and not making the jump would work out pretty well, since it is a really powerful mechanic. So as far as other war gear they could have, besides the teleportation itself, which is just kind of baked into the cake with them, is their armor, because it houses the warp drive, is heavier, which means it's better armor, but they're also slower. So they could have a better save, but then have less movement, kind of join the Plague Marines with having a 4-inch move. Alright, so now let's talk about weapons. Their main weapon is called a Death Spinner, and this thing's pretty cool. So from how I understand it, it takes a bunch of metal, and then they have a device that takes all that razor sharp metal, turns it into a wire, and launches it at the opponent. This seems like one of those weapons that would be really high damage if it hits, but it would have a limited range. But that works pretty well with their hit and run. They're not trying to snipe you across the map. They're trying to get in close, do lethal damage, and then get out. The leaders also have a spinneret rifle, which I think works basically the same way, but it's specifically designed to take out armored targets. I think this would basically be the same weapon, but it would probably have armor piercing, or at least piercing, where if you roll a crit, you get the armor piercing ability. Maybe even something like piercing and lethal 5 up for that would be a pretty good combo, just to show it is a more powerful weapon. Alright, another weapon they have are their power blades, and this is their melee weapon. So the power blades are supposed to be pretty equivalent to power weapons as far as strength, but they're specifically designed to parry. I think that's because they're not really their primary weapon, they're mostly defensive. So there's a couple ways you do this as far as the parrying. I think one that would be interesting would be have it where normal hits can block crits. So you're not getting more parries, but they're more effective. This would make it where their parries are just more reliable. If your opponent rolls really well or has some kind of lethal 5-up weapon, you don't really have to worry about it. You know you're gonna block some of the damage. So another way where you could buff a parry is have it where you actually, even if you get attacked, it to activate first, but that first activation has to be a parry. So you get to parry an attack before your opponent ever gets to go. But then it goes back to where they can hit you first. Alright, so the Warp Spiders do have fusion guns and other long-range normal weapons, but I don't think it's normally what they take. So this seems like it'd be one of their equipment options. So if you want one unit to sit on the back line, that is something you can do. Right, like I said earlier, and like Glass said in his video, these are all rumors. We don't know if any of it's gonna happen. And most of this video was just my idea of what I think would be cool to do with Warp Spiders if they do come into Killteam. Alright, if you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.